All right. I think I'm back. Anyways, I've assembled a great panel. They operate in all different corners of the LA comedy scene. And again, this is like a conversation to have over a bunch of different topics because originally this was going to happen like 2.5 weeks ago. And then other stuff was happening with a very justifiable cultural uprising. So I thought maybe it would be we do better to have it at another time like today. So I'm just going to get into introducing our panel. First up, we have the man behind Clef Clips, the producer and booker of Hot Tub with Kurt and Kristen, the Super Serious Show, both of the Virgil, Joel Mandelkorn, everybody. Round of applause.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course. Next up, we have the owner of Echoes on Pico, formerly Echoes Under Sunset, for those OGs in the LA comedy scene, Christian Chavez, everybody. Christian, there we go. Round of applause for Christian. Get cozy there.
I'm here.
And finally, we had a slight change of plans. We had the owner of Flappers Comedy Club coming in, but now we have the booker of Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank, Joshua Snyder, everybody.
Side claps.
Yeah, thanks all for coming. I do want to mention right at the top here, I want to shout out and give a thanks to Hold the Phone Comedy for hosting this roundtable discussion. Hold the Phone has been really instrumental in keeping comedy kind of going and alive in quarantine, and they produce a lot of great shows. And I did not have the time and resources to have an ASL interpreter, but I'm working on getting transcripts of this roundtable after the fact. And this live stream should be available on the YouTube channel, and we're going to work on getting clips as well. I first just want to check in with all of you, because I haven't physically seen you in months. How are you all doing?
Gotta pick an order.
Okay, fine. Is that it?
I mean, I'm probably the easiest person to answer this because I'm not attached to a venue,
Right.
So way less stress,
Mm-hmm.
on my end. So doing okay. We have our weekly show going on streaming, and it's okay.
Right.
And just kind of being very patient. But I have the luxury to do that on the live comedy front.
Right.
So I'm boring.
Well, I think boring is a win at this point. Christian, how you doing?
Woo! Barely surviving.
Yeah?
Rent still has to get paid. Bills still have to get paid at the business. I can't have people in my building doing private film shoots every now and then just to pay the insurance and the electrical bills. But boy, am I in debt.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah, I'm going up on 75 grand now these past 3 months in debt.
Shit.
Yeah.
Is that like a case of you just not paying rent or?
Yeah, not paying rent.
Wow.
Paying rent. I'm lying, not 75. No, it's more like 45. I don't know where I got 75 from. It's like 45. But still, it feels like 75.
Yeah,
45,
yeah,
75, the difference.
What difference does it make? Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. This is why we're having this conversation, to figure out what we can do.
I really want to keep the place open. I love doing the comedy, I love doing shows, and it's like, I don't know, I could, just trying to do whatever I can to keep it open and just giving the fucking landlord what little money I could get. And I'm literally over like 46,000 in debt right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sadly, I don't think you're alone.
Yeah.
Bars just opened up here in LA, and not all bars are even opening up. And I'd actually be curious to hear more about that from you, Josh, because Flappers has kind of been open the whole time because you guys are a bar and a restaurant.
Yes. Well, I think the biggest challenge is that everything is changing constantly and there's no answers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just overall. So,
yeah.
like, and you know, so I find myself, watching Twitter and going, oh, all right, well, Chicago's going to limited phase 4. What does that mean for us? And, trying to, I feel like I'm reading tea leaves, only it's Twitter, as to what is, what's going to happen, when we can do this, when we can do that. The major challenge for us is that we're zoned as a restaurant.
Right.
And restaurants are allowed to open at 60% capacity. We can open as a restaurant, but we're also considered a live event venue, so we can't do live shows.
Right.
And it's frustrating because if you're looking at it from the sense of safety, what's the difference? There's really not much of a difference between, 50 people in a room eating dinner and 51 people in a room, and one of them is standing safely away on a stage talking into a microphone.
I think that's safer.
They're lumping us together with the Staples Center.
Really?
That's basically what's happening. And so we've been really trying to, work with the health department, because we obviously don't want to do anything that's A, unsafe, and B, goes against what the regulations are. But we are trying to explain to these departments that it's, you've got to make some exceptions to, you can't just make broad sweeping generalizations as to what a live event venue is. Huge difference between somebody playing music at the end of a bar and the Almanson doing a major production of Wicked with 1,000 people in the audience and 1,000 people on stage.
Right.
So, and so at first the thought was we'll open for takeout, and because at that point, nothing, only essential businesses could be open. And so we did that, and we were doing okay. And then we tried being a sort of a grocery store, which we've kind of moved away from now, because it made sense back in a time when no one could get paper anywhere, and we could, because we still had access to some of the restaurant supply chains that most people didn't have. And now we've signed up with something called Great Plates, which is basically we are making a ton of meals and then delivering them to mostly elderly people who can't leave the house, due to the virus. And, between all of but overall, it's very stressful, because there's no indication of when we can reopen. There's a lot of unanswered questions. There's a lot of, back and forth, whether it's financial institutions or whoever. And, the answers to those questions are, we don't know either. So it's, I feel like the entire country is kind of improvising as they go.
Yeah. I would say even more than that, like whenever they release these guidelines, this is a pattern that I've seen in like phases 1, 2, and 3. They release them without telling any of those businesses in those classes, hey, we're going to do this. These are what the guidelines are ahead of time. And maybe you should get ready for that. And then people have to scramble or make a judgment call as to what they're going to do, when they're going to do it. And then, that's the reason that like everyone's doing different things, and then people don't follow guidelines. Last weekend, health officials visited like 2,000 restaurants in LA County, and 1,000 of them were breaking code that had been instituted because of COVID-19. And I mean, I can tell you, I went to one of the big marches, and after the route was done, like all these restaurants in WeHo just like stopped caring about distancing or whether people were wearing masks, and everybody just jam-packed all these restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you know, it's great that we're risking our lives to go out on this march for like a good reason, but there's the pandemic's still here. You're still susceptible to getting COVID-19. So don't go like shoulder to shoulder at a restaurant. Yeah, and I definitely feel if like one place, one person, if they're not on the same page, and that kind of ruins it for us all. I mean, in the months that lockdown has gone, I've been contacted several times by different people who are running in-person open mics, which are crazy, and they keep trying to reassure me that they're taking precaution. And they always say masks are optional, which is like, well, then what's the point? If one person isn't wearing a mask, that ruins it for everybody. Did you guys all see the clip of DL Hughley finishing stage?
Yep.
I mean, yeah, I think that's what there's a potential of somebody here doing that, and it's not. I don't want that to happen. You know, I mean, he had COVID-19 and didn't even know it. And then if you look at that clip, everybody's sitting like shoulder to shoulder. A lot of people aren't wearing masks. And I mean, I get that you can't drink through your mask, but like you gotta, I mean, so that's like another consideration to have if you're gonna have drinks, if you're gonna have food.
I think the problem is, you know, unless the company that owns the club, you know, is owned by someone who's a billionaire.
Sure.
And we are not, by the way.
Right.
You know, we're being told you have to close.
Mm-hmm.
And we're, you know, the Great Plates thing, I will, you know, to the credit of the state of California, is a good program that,
mm-hmm.
you know, can help us. But still, it's, you know, we're not, you know, obviously we're not doing what we were doing when we were opening for shows.
Right.
And what's frustrating is you've got, you know, the government saying you can't open because it's not safe. But at the same time, you know, no one's coming along to, you know, bail us out for the 3 months to a year or however long this is going to be. So, you know, and then we're caught going, well, we want to be safe, but at the same time, we have to operate,
mm-hmm.
have to keep going. And it's a choose your own adventure that's written by Sartre. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah. Sure. And you just never know when it's going to end, especially, I mean, if you guys are getting lumped in with, you know, the Music Center or the Amundsen or Staples, I mean, all those are like, think about 2021, you know, Hollywood Bowl canceled their for all of 2021. You okay, Christian?
Yeah, I'm good. Sorry.
All right. It's okay. All right. I mean, I'm not an epidemiologist. I just know I heard a cough. That's all.
The LA scene is so dire. 4 of us came in. Only 3 of us came out of the Zoom meeting. It was
shit.
Yeah,
tragic.
When do you guys have a guess? I mean, it's literally just a guess as to when you think things you might be allowed to open up or shows might be allowed to happen, and would you feel comfortable with that, or are you going to wait? I mean, in talking to other people and trying to assemble this panel, there are people that just they want to only do shows when there's a vaccine. That's the only time they would feel good about doing it.
Well, here's our general plan of attack. I mean, we're not going to go against the government. We're not going to go against the health department and do that because that's there'd be no point.
Right.
And in terms of when we think we're, you know, like I said, like I just got a call from a manager of a major headliner yesterday who asked me the exact same question, and I will tell you what I tell him. Do you know the governor? I don't know the governor.
Right.
Ask him.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that I guess my thought on it is that it's that we, you know, when we're given the all clear to open,
mm-hmm.
we want to open, but we also want to be able to service both comedians and guests on both sides of the camp here. So you've got some comedians and guests who are not going to want to leave their house and they're not going to feel comfortable.
Right.
And so for them, we're running virtual comedy shows 7 nights a week.
Yeah. And you've been doing that pretty much from the get-go.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, we closed in the middle of March.
Mm-hmm.
And I think two or 3 days after we closed, we moved all of our classes online.
Mm-hmm.
And I was teaching a Zoom class.
Right.
And I said something and all 4 people laughed at the same time. And I went, oh, wait a minute. I wonder if this is something. And I had heard that Maria Bamford was doing Zoom shows.
Yeah.
So we gathered together some of the open mic hosts and a few other, regular Flappers regulars.
Mm-hmm.
And we started doing open mics 7 nights a week in Zoom.
Right.
And when we started to feel more comfortable about that, and we started to figure out how we wanted to run a Zoom show, which is we wanted to treat it like an actual show and have, house music playing at the beginning and then play an upcoming events video and have a showrunner who's spotlighting people. Then we started doing actual shows, and Bamford actually very graciously was one of our first Zoom headliners. And it was a big show that she did with Jackie Cation and Laurie Kilmartin.
I remember that, yeah.
From that point forward, starting in May, we started running them 7 nights a week. And, some are successful and have a big house and some are not. But it's, I think we're looking at it as basically we have 2 comedy clubs now. We have the physical club and the virtual club.
Yeah.
And, creatively, our focus is let's build up the virtual, because there's a lot of cool things that are happening with the virtual club.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people have gotten really inventive and creative with what they've been able to do on Zoom or any sort of live streaming. I mean, Joel, the Hot Tub took some weeks off, but you came back, and I think you guys have done a really good job sort of translating Hot Tub with Kurt and Kristen into a live stream show. How have you felt about it in these past months?
I think it's a make-do solution. It's okay, and okay in these times it's maybe pretty good. We're kind of disregarding audience audio. So it's a weird kind of mind trip for the performers, even on shorter sets, to kind of go into the void. Right. The only thing that saves us is Jake at Hold the Phone helps give it a nice kind of broadcast quality.
Right.
Kristen, our host, kind of try their best to bring the same energy, and that little bit of like before and after the show green room, I guess, loosens up everything and makes it not a total depressing thing for the comedians. Right. But I think we're just trying to make do. I'm not sure. Yeah. And there's probably still better versions to be had for sure.
Sure. Maybe even having like a VIP audience of maybe 10 people in the Zoom call that are just there to be an audience or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. I've heard people are doing that or versions of that, and I don't know. Me, again, as someone who just produces a couple shows and doesn't have the responsibility to fill a schedule, it seems like a pain in the ass to have to basically put an audience and manage that. But if you're doing it more full force and regularly, there might be a more streamlined way to do that.
Right. I think you're headed in the right direction, though. Before I get to you, Christian, I wanted. There's a question in the chat that on YouTube about have you guys experienced any sort of fatigue in terms of audience or turnout? Because as lockdown stretches on, or people are starting to see this second wave or cases back up again. We've been watching live streaming so much. I mean, I don't know what's your. I mean, I've been tuning in every night because that's just me. But sometimes I'll watch like 3. This is actually a time when people who thought I watched like 4 shows at the same time, I can actually now do that. Yeah, I often do that.
Congrats.
So you guys that are doing like live stream, for example, Flappers, I mean, that's not really to make money though, right? I mean, it's really basically just to keep Flapper's name out there. Because I can't believe, I mean, you can't be really nobody's making money.
Well, we're selling tickets to them, but we're not making nearly as much as we are making on a live show because there's no food and beverage.
Right.
So it's to keep comedy going. It is to, bring in some income, because some income is better than nothing.
Right.
But I think it's also, I'm a comedian too. And why I pushed for it in the beginning was because I wanted to find some way to perform. And if I can talk into a computer and I hear 3 people laughing back at me, that's better than nothing. And to be honest, sometimes there have been nights where, like the Bamford night, for instance, we made more on the ticket sales of the virtual show than we did in the takeout sales. So,
really?
Yeah. I look at it more that, and this may be controversial of me to say this, dare I say it, but I think that virtual comedy is a new form. I don't think it's going to go away.
Sure.
I think that there's a lot of people out there. We got a message from someone who said, I live in like a small town, so none of these comedians will ever come to my town. I look at it more that, so, I think there are people out there, and we're starting to notice that there are people who are coming every week to watch our virtual show. Not coming, but they're Zooming in every week. It's the same people over and over again, and they're not in California. So I think that the challenge is that our mailing list, I think the vast majority of our mailing list are people who are seeing physical shows. And there's a little bit, there is a crossover, but it's not, there's some people that are just not going to be into it. They don't like it. They're never going to do it.
Sure.
So I think it's more a matter of trying to identify people who may never have thought of Flappers because they're not, near Flappers, and spreading the word that we're doing them. And I think that, as we do them consistently, I think there's a potential to build the audience, frankly, and to actually make it bigger. And I think that when things open up again and when the virus is behind us, are we going to do virtual shows 7 nights a week? Probably not. But I think we'll definitely do the open mics virtually, at least 1 or a few nights. And I think comedians will also be more open to a situation where we have, people in the showroom, but we do a private live stream at the same time.
Right. That was, I think, is going to be one of the ways forward. I've been thinking that kind of since day one. Especially, there's been a lot of shows. I mean, Hot Tub has had weeks like this where there's more people that are virtually watching than sometimes you've had at the Virgil in person, right?
Sure, yeah, a few times.
Yeah, and like if there's just like technology where you could feed in a high quality audio and camera feed into Zoom, and then you just set that up at the venue. I think that would be worth people paying for, especially as like, we don't know when a vaccine is coming. We don't know when a strong antiviral is coming. And some people will want to stay in their house. But if they know that they can hear laughs and it'll seem like a real comedy show and they'll be part of the live experience, I think that's worth it. And, you could fit in more people than, that might make up for the lack of capacity that you're kind of forced to do. Now, Christian, you closed down Echoes because you had to, and you haven't done any live stream shows yet?
Nope, no live streams yet.
Have you been thinking about it, or?
I've been thinking about it. I've been telling other comics or people that want to come in and do it. I mean, I'm not going to charge for the space, just come in, but people are still kind of like hesitant to come into the room or get out or do anything. So again, I'm doing pretty much everything there on my own. So I try and get help from other comics or other producers, but it's difficult.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, again, we're not legally allowed to reopen.
Yeah. And again, I mean, my ex-wife works for LA County Health Department. and this isn't going to be over. I mean, there's not going to be a vaccine for this till at least another year.
That's what she's saying?
At the earliest. So, I mean, this is going to be going on for a while. And again, in November, December is going to be the second wave, and it's going to get right back to where we were again in March and April. So, I mean, yeah, live streaming, I think, is where we got to go.
Yeah. So are you trying to think of how you're going to do live streaming at Echoes or some other
Thinking
thing?
of that, yeah, and you know, coming up with other ideas of what I'm going to do during the day that, I mean, at this point, that's apart from comedy, you know, working with some nonprofit organizations, kind of use it like a hub for other nonprofits to come in and just, you know, put out their information or whatever they're fighting for, whatever their causes are. So at least, you know, to try and keep the space.
I think that's a good use of your space because you do have like a very modifiable space.
Yeah. It's just a big open room, so it could be used for a lot of different things. So I'll do what I can to stay open.
You're gonna have a rally. You're gonna have a demonstration at Echoes.
We should. I mean, they broke our window. They broke already one of my windows. Broke two
really?
Windows, 2 stores down. Yeah.
Damn, man. That sucks. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Really quick, I want to start. There's a lot to cover, so I want to move to this really quick. And I mean, I know, you know, we've already discussed how we don't know when things will reopen, but like, how would you imagine safety protocol in doing live shows? I mean, you know, you've already seen it with restaurants trying it. They have limited capacity. You have to wear masks if you get up from your table. Servers are in gloves and masks. Sometimes there's one way to enter, another way to exit. Do you guys, have you thought about that at all? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Oh yeah, we're already, you know, we're getting the glass barriers where we need to put them.
Between tables?
Not between tables. There might be some discussions of trying to put them up on the rail. But
in the main room?
Yeah, in the main room. Yeah. Okay. But I think the big thing is, you know, getting well, actually demonstrate. Having the servers wear this and a mask.
Okay.
You know, obviously doing, you know, more deep cleanings. And we were always, you know, we were always good on the cleanliness factor. I know, you know, I think that's, you know, we were never, that was never really a problem for us. So, you know, a lot of these modifications, this was already aware of that and will be able to execute that. I think the other, you know, the tricky part is capacity. So for instance, you know, we would run the open mics in the bar. And so you have, you know, comedians in there and you're doing, you know, you're doing it as a lottery. So I'm assuming that if, you know, once we open again and we're at a limited capacity, that style of open mic is probably not going to be possible. So,
yeah,
you know, so I think there's going to be I'm not even sure if we'll do shows in the Yoo-Hoo room at first. You know, I think it might just be, you know, one main room show a night. The open mics will probably stay virtual for a while.
Right.
And then, you know, when we do start to phase in, I foresee maybe a booked open mic situation where we know who's coming in. Because the other thing we have to do is we're going to have to get the name, the phone, and the email of every person who goes through that building. Because if there is a problem or an outbreak or something, God forbid, then everyone has to be contacted. So it is a process.
Yeah, that's your own form of contact tracing.
Well, I think that comes down from the health department. Every restaurant should be doing that. They have to get your name and phone. Like when you went to the restaurant, did they get your contact information?
They don't do that.
No, but I will say this: they just know who I am because I go there all the time.
Okay. But my understanding is they have to get everyone's information so that.
Whoa! No one is doing that. That's actually code.
That's what I was. See, but
no one is doing that.
That's the first I ever heard of it, actually.
But this is and it changes. Like at one point Barb went up to Will, who's our general manager, and said people can sit at the bar, and he said no, they can't. And she said, I just read something that said that they can. And he said, well, I just read something that said that they can't. So it you know, because there was a point at which, what was it that changed? That, at first when the restaurants opened, people had to make a reservation. And then 2 days later, they said, never mind, you can take in walk-ins.
Right.
So it's really been chaos.
Oh, yeah. It's been chaos every day. Joel, I'm curious, how would you imagine doing shows at the Virgil if you're allowed to reopen? Or like, what is your thoughts on that?
I mean, I guess it's similar to what has been discussed, and we've only had really early conversations with them, and nothing's on the horizon for them opening or us or doing any shows.
Oh, they're not even reopened as a bar, even though they can do that? Yeah.
I mean, maybe a small audience of a few dozen people, spaced out, mask wearing, and safety, and then less comedian interaction, and figure out backstage, maybe even literally standing in the alley.
That's the new green room.
And then I don't even know if that's worth it for the bar. If the haircut's that low, unless they're getting some kind of, support or break in some other way. But that's really the only way that it would work. And then you have to stream it too.
Yeah.
That's the only way it's going to work in the near future as far as the best in the Virgil.
Yeah. The early conversations, do you think that means like you're talking about November, December or something like that?
I mean, I'm allowing things to change and improve, and
sure.
I don't know. But, with the information we have right now, there's a big fat maybe for the fall. But personally, and again, I have the luxury to kind of step aside or keep things digital. I'm not anticipating until next year.
Right. Yeah.
Because November, December again, that's when it's going to start all over again. I mean, you see right now how the infection rate is higher than it's ever been.
Yeah. Oh, Christian dropped. There you are. Yeah. Well, that's because people thought after 3 months that it's just like, oh, I didn't get it. I can stop wearing a mask and I can go back. And you can't. That's the thing.
And the age ranges of people getting infected now are going down. Now it's like typical for anybody between like the ages of 32 and up that are getting infected. So it's just getting worse.
Right.
It's really, really bad.
Yeah. It's really, really bad. So you have a big space, Christian. I mean, like if and when, we just named dates, but as things roll out, do you have an idea of how you would do things, run things, like doing shows at Echoes? Because you get to move all your furniture. Huh?
Yeah, you saw the furniture. I have it all spread out, and I'm just going to have a maximum capacity of probably like 45 people. Because, my capacity is like 130.
Right.
You get into a room. So, I'll just stick to, 40 people, do a couple of shows, maybe one extra show, and then on a weekend or something like that. But, yeah, 40 max, 45 people.
Now, what are you going to do to take care of performers? I heard that Josh was saying that they're going to put a glass on stage that separates the audience from the performer. I'm kind of thinking about like how the mic and the mic stand and the mic cord are like all going to be common high touch surfaces.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any ideas about that? Other people have said that they're going to use multiple mics throughout shows. I thought maybe don't even use a mic. Which is not the best, but you don't have to worry about touching a mic and you'll be distanced from people on stage. So.
I think I might do a side job and start selling mics to comics. So comics go around with their own mics.
Yeah.
Go perform. Seriously, I've had a few comics that do bring their own mics. Way before this even started.
Right.
That they walk in with their own mics because there are hundreds of people talking into the mic, so they take their own mics. Why not? It's like your instrument, right?
Yeah, that's what. But also, then like you still have to worry about plugging it in and into the same sound system.
Yeah.
So that's like something that has to either be disinfected or there has to be a person that's responsible for it. Yeah,
there's a lot.
It's a lot. That's if anyone was thinking of running an open mic now, I think you'd have to do it outside at a park or something, and everyone would have to be distanced and then no microphone. You would just have to talk a cappella. And that would be maybe safe, maybe, but nobody's doing any of that. People want to get cramped into these tiny like rehearsal rooms and the mask optional or whatever. I mean, yeah, I don't think that's gonna cut it. But I want to cover another topic. I mean, if you have anything you want to bring up about anything else we covered, please feel free. But you know, we were kind of talking about
one quick correction.
Yeah.
We're not thinking right now of a bubble around the stage per se. It was more possibly separating the front of the audience from the back of the audience, because there's a place where people are breathing right on top of
I see.
right there. But what we were going to do with the stage was we were going to take out the first row, because there's that row that's right up against the stage.
Right. I remember that.
Make sure that there's, you know, we want to keep that, you know, at least 6 feet apart between performer and audience.
And how many people would you kind of fit in the main room at limited capacity?
Well, I mean, if we operate under the assumption that they're gonna that we're at 25% capacity, which is what we're guessing, that would be 50 people in the room that seats 200, and we can easily space them out to be socially distanced. And we've also been able to. We have a 4-camera setup, and we can easily set that up to a Zoom account. And have 50 people in the showroom, and then up to 500 people in the Zoom room.
Right. Oh, well, that sounds pretty nice. And I think that it brings me to another kind of topic I want to cover, and we're kind of getting at, is the sustainability of it. I mean, again, we don't know when things can even try to go back to normal, but like, I mean, all of this is just keeping us afloat, or, I mean, the plan of, I mean, I think that's kind of have to be key, is like combining live and live streaming. Do you think that's going to work?
I think that let me put it to you this way. There was a headliner who shall remain nameless.
Right.
Who actually, I'm not even about to say anything bad, but their idea was they were going to write an entire act that was to do with being on lockdown, and do that for virtual shows. And then as soon as they could get back to physical shows, do another act for physical shows. So I think you've got that. You know, you got a comedian like Maria Bamford, who's constantly doing virtual shows, Jackie Cation, Laurie Kilmartin. I think it really is going to depend on the artist, and it depends on the venue. And I think there's some comedians who are able to make that shift a lot easier, and they're doing shows and they're selling tickets as we speak. And I think that the challenge too is that you've got a lot of, you know, Bamford, it makes sense that Bamford can function in a virtual show because she's the kind of performer where that works for her. There are other kind of performers who, you know, are the ones who are high energy and very, very fast paced struggle more.
Sure.
And so for them, I think it's going to be harder. They're going to have to adjust. I think we're all going to have to universally accept the fact that Zoom comedy is not exactly the same as live comedy.
Oh yeah, I don't think anybody's arguing that. I wouldn't argue that.
Yeah, and that it's, you know, and that the more that you can adapt to it and just say, okay, this is a new form, and it's kind of like stand-up, but kind of not, and there are things I can do here that I can't do in stand-up, and all of that. Like, it, you know, I think it will. Here's the other thing that I can report on is what's going on in the world of corporate comedy in colleges.
Oh yeah, let's fill us in on that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, you know, the situation with the colleges is they will oftentimes have a budget and they have to spend that money, or they're not going to get the money again next year. So a lot of the college acts are actually, a lot of their shows are being converted to Zoom shows. And sometimes they're getting paid as much as they would have if they were going to the college. Sometimes they're revising it and they're doing it for less. But the college kids are adapting far more quickly to this kind of form, which intuitively makes sense, than older crowds. But then I'm also talking to comedians, who were doing a lot of corporate work, and they are starting to get some corporate work too, where they're doing corporate Zoom shows and they Zoom into the company. Right. So it's, no one is making as much money, but I'm seeing an adaptation that's starting to happen. I think if anything, it's not so much are you able to or are you not able to? I think it's kind of a, how do I phrase it? It's becoming more socially acceptable. Before this started, virtually no comedians would ever think to do this.
No.
And it would be like, no, this is offensive to do this.
Yeah. Again, you guys feed off the the crowd's energy. So it's like, how do you do it in a room where there's nobody there with you?
And this is the other fascinating thing, because I was having a conversation with an engineer who works with Amazon. And, obviously Zoom was never made to have, 50 people in a room laughing and have that work well. And the problem is you have 50 individual mics and 50 individual cameras. And what they're talking about now is creating an AI that can take all of those individual streams and in real time modulate them. Because the other problem is that if you've got 50 people laughing, inevitably the person whose face is right up to the mic is going to sound louder than the person whose that mic is farther away. And so if they can come up with an AI that can automatically modulate that, so it sounds, it's basically doing live sound mixing in the moment. I think that the Zoom experience might get better over time.
Or a comic could just have a button that he presses when he expects a laugh, and there'll be laughs behind him.
I mean, people have done that in character as a bit.
Yeah.
I don't know how long that'll last.
There's an in-between option, maybe, that there's on the audience side. Maybe there's someone comes up with like a layering or like a software solution to basically push the button to do a digital laugh is automatically, able to be, mixed and sound. I mean, it'll be weird and different, but maybe over time that's an option to get some kind of feedback. And that's still slightly organic because it's initiated by a person, but I don't know.
Well, I'm conflicted sometimes because naturally, our goal is for the virtual shows is we want to sell as many tickets as we can. But I found that, if there's about 20 people in the room and there's enough to create that consensus that's needed, in a way, sometimes that's enough. And part of what we do too, by the way, is we have, we trained people to manage, 100 people in a Zoom room, going in and muting anyone who's having a problem or, kicking people out if they're causing a problem, that kind of thing. And so their job is to monitor the entire show and modulate everything so that it doesn't get in the way of the experience. And the other thing we're finding is that as audiences are becoming more used to using Zoom, they're kind of doing it on their own. And I'm seeing people in the audience realize, oh, that was me, I need to fix that. And then they fix it, and then the show's right back on track again.
Right. What I'm interested in is, obviously Bamford is, operating well. People like her are operating well in this sort of live stream space. And a lot of, stand-up shows that even happen on Instagram Live, comics are getting paid. And as things sort of open up and people kind of like dance back and forth whether they want to do live shows or not, I think comics who aren't names, so to speak, yet, I think they're going to want to get paid where they didn't get paid before. So I don't know that somebody will want to go do like 7 minutes in Long Beach for drink tickets anymore. You guys have thoughts on that? Because I just think like they've realized that they've gotten paid in quarantine for doing like these weird versions of stand-up. I mean, I know that Hot Tub already pays, and I know that like Christian, you work at deals with people where people produce the shows, they can make some money and hopefully pay performers. But I just think going forward, I think that's going to be a big part of comedy moving forward, is like people like across the board getting paid instead of we just like work for free or drink tickets for every single show.
Well, first of all, for the virtual shows, by the way, for the bigger names, we are doing door deals. So
cool.
We are paying them. We, for the physical shows on the weekends, for instance, and on some of the scale shows, we would pay as well. We're not doing that now because I would say we would consider doing that if we weren't also attached to the brick and mortar. But right now, so much of what we have to do is, we're trying to bring in as much as possible to, keep the place going. But that might be, a next step of starting to pay the MCs too. In terms of will comedians come out for free, I think it's really going to depend on what the individual comedian needs, because it depends on what's more important to them, the time or the money.
Right.
Because the people who, need to be in front of an audience, a real audience, and are not going to feel comfortable until they've done what they need to do in front of a live audience. Right. I think they're going to still drive to all the spots and, do what they need to do to get that stage time.
Until they get COVID.
Well, and that
that seems to be the big thing that changes people's minds.
It's and that's a really excellent philosophical question, because I was talking with someone who said, there could never be a vaccine for this. They say they're going to come up with one, but if there's never a vaccine, and this is something that we're living with possibly forever, there's going to come a point, I think, where we can't quarantine forever, can we? I mean,
no, we can't.
There's going to come a point where there's going to have to be, a line is going to have to be crossed as to, and I think this is only something that could be answered, per person of when, is it when do I start taking the risk?
Right.
When do I stop? And there's no easy answer for that, because my guess, because I was, from what I've read and what I've heard, this sounds to me like it's going to go the way of the Spanish flu. And what happened with the Spanish flu is that it hit hard once, it hit twice as hard again, and eventually it became the flu that recurred every year, and I think it stopped being less deadly, but it just became a yearly thing that would come around.
Right.
I think that's what this sounds like this is going to be, where 10 years from now, there is, coronavirus is, it's another flu that you can catch. And the question is, I guess, at what point does it normalize? And I don't know.
I don't know. But in just talking to comics, I think they're going to want to have a little more equity with their stage time, especially if there's risk, like clear and present risk involved in going on stage. We're sort of running down on time here, so I want to cover this last thing. Thanks again for everybody joining in. I hope this has been helpful, or it has people thinking, or the wheels turning. Again, this will be available on the Comedy Bureau's YouTube channel, and we can, people share it and check it out, all that sort of stuff. Given the events of the last few weeks, in the protests of affirming Black Lives Matter and against police brutality and systemic racism and oppression, there has been it's been a question as to where comedy might fit in this moment. How, certainly in those first weeks of protest, it would almost seem tone deaf to do a show. A lot of shows took the week off. A lot of shows actually took the 3 weeks off. I certainly rescheduled this panel because of that. And I think it's important. But I also think it's important that we somehow figure in this moment. UCB and Second City, you might have heard of, like, in restructuring, along with a lot of other comedy institutions and schools, are kind of from the bottom to the top, like instituting all these things that uplift POC voices, and they're educating with anti-racism, and they're really thinking about having diversity and inclusion. And I'm not saying you guys necessarily don't do that, but do you have thoughts about moving forward in that regard?
I'll jump in.
Jump in.
And there's a lot of layers to this, and there's a whole conversation about, you know, systemic things and running business and how that machine works, and how you incorporate people on the staff side, customer side, and, you know, performer side, and how to, you know, I don't know, be better and install better practices or conversations. And there's also, you know, better culture for safety and all that good stuff. And those require probably dialogue and a little more intent, but it's a lot more complicated, and it's mixed in with paying rent and, and people's salaries and such. But on the independent side, I think it's, and it kind of comes in ebbs and flows over the 10 plus years I've been around it, of trying to just be honest, listen to people, create spaces, you know, the simple version of, like, create a space and for people to do what they do, feel free to perform, but also, you know, are aware of the time and collegial, and also just maybe do away with whatever this old school, like, for decades of hierarchy and ego that sometimes gets intertwined with comedy and live comedy.
Yeah, and
easier said than done, but but on the independent side, you know, sometimes it gets in clicks, and then people still go to the habits of getting shut off or bad behavior and not feeling comfortable addressing it, or, you know, or knowing about it.
Right.
But maybe I think just like adding that into just putting on shows is probably the best practice.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be like we have big, you know, over dramatic seminars all the time, or, you know, superficial diversity conversations. Those are good.
Right.
But so I think it's gotta have day in and day out policies, and then talk to each other.
Yeah, I think better communication and better transparency. I mean, what would the mechanisms be to, like, have that in place? I mean, does there need to be, like, you know, a think tank, a separate organization of comedians, or comedians and people who run comedy, or there needs to be, like, you know, a database of whether you, I mean, like, some people just, like, when they're booking their shows, they don't know any comedians of color because they don't bother to go look, or something like that. I don't know.
That's bullshit. I mean, you get on the internet for 20 minutes, you'll be okay. You're gonna be on your way there.
I agree.
And I early years of my booking, like, I definitely, like, fall through, and I think we all do, of, like, trying to, like, get new people credit fame. And when you do that, when you do the fame thing, you're basically buying into the system that white dudes, white dudes, like, more famous. So there's more of them. And so you can kind of justify that. But I think you have to just say, fuck it. Have a little nod towards that, and people who experience and have earned headlining sets and all that sort of thing, but be way more aggressive about just putting funny people up who are good for the vibe, for the culture, and just let go of the old who's famous, who's going to draw people. And it might be a rough patch to start, but I think over time, in my experience, people appreciate funny, especially on a local level, local scene. And they can start to kind of get in the habit of being okay with not TV and movie stars, you know?
Yeah, I agree too. I think if you put in the work and you establish good people to kind of follow that, and
easier for me. I only run a few shows, so
but they're pretty big. people love them.
Dude, I'm lucky in my location. Fortunately, I mean, the past 2 years that I've been there, 80% of my crowd and comics have been Black comics, LGBTQ. So, that's not a problem for me. And that's why, I mean, I want to put it out there right now too. Whoever's listening, producers, comics, whoever wants to do Zoom at my place, I'm willing to go for, 60-40 split. You get 40% of whatever you bring in. If you get a bigger crowd, I don't know, we could do maybe 50-50, but I just want to keep the room going. And if you need a stage to come to, I got a big stage and we could work it out.
Yeah. We only have like just a couple more minutes here. Josh, do you want to chime in on this?
Yeah, well, Barb and Dave, who started Flappers, from the beginning, wanted to build a situation where we would create a supportive community from the beginning. And I think that's something I take a lot of pride in. That I think we've always done a good job doing that. One thing I've, as a booker, since taking over doing the booking full time, is I do, I've learned there's a right way and a wrong way to handle diversity. And it really, like, for instance, one thing I tried to do early on was I tried to book like an all Indian comedy show with all Indian comedians. And the problem is they didn't ask for that. Right. So they're like, no, this is, this doesn't feel right.
And that's still pushing them to the margins.
Exactly. And so that's not the solution. Right. The solution, is, piggybacking off of what Joel said. Are you funny? Great. Let's give you an opportunity, and let's give you an opportunity to say what you want to say and not force you in a show where you are pigeonholed. Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing too is that, we have to provide that space where those voices can be amplified.
Right.
And I will also, we discussed at length, what actions we should take when all this went down a few weeks ago. And many of us marched. I personally donated to the Black Lives Matter. Right. But one thing we didn't do is we didn't do a lot, if any, social media, because we felt like anything that we would post felt to us like it would be, look what we're doing. And yeah. And our thought was, no, we need to get out of the way and let these people have social media.
Right.
And shut up.
Yeah.
So,
and you guys didn't post a black square.
Yeah. I mean, we talked a lot about that.
Right.
We were back and forth because we were reading, we read one article that said, don't do it, because it was flooding all of the hashtags.
We have one minute, by the way. I'm so sorry.
Oh, okay.
Did you have any final
but long story short, we we in general, and I specifically, am committed to really giving every single comedian who comes through here something.
Right.
Even if it's a new comedian who's terrible, but who has the potential to be good, we need to find something for them somewhere. Or if it's a comedian who's been doing it for 5 years, who's really great, but no one buys tickets to see them, we've got to put them somewhere too.
Yep.
So that, they can get the stage time and they can grow. So it's, how can we find that balance? And we're, doing the best we can and trucking.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what you guys do, because I will say this about Flappers, you guys are willing to try anything. I mean, you guys did try to deliver comedians to people's houses, I think in week 2 or something like that.
Yep.
That is unfortunately all the time we have. Of course, we can talk ad nauseum about what might happen, what we all need to do. But I hope this has been helpful again for everybody, and it's just starting to get the wheels turning. Certainly, they've been turning in my head and all of yours. I would please ask people go check out Hot Tub, Hold the Phone Comedy, Echoes on Pico, Flappers Comedy, and support LA Comedy and Live Comedy at large. I want to thank my guests, Joel Mandelkorn, Joshua Snyder, and Chavez, and thanks to Hold the Phone Comedy. And I will have this in archive, and we'll try releasing clips, and there'll try to be transcripts. I'm Jay Corr of the Comedy Bureau. Please visit the Comedy Bureau. Use it. It's reporting on comedy around the world now, and I have live streams every day. And that is the future of LA comedy. Thank you so much, everybody.